It is time for you to start reading philosophy, but if you have been paralyzed by not knowing where to start, this video is going to fix that. I have a list of books here that I'm going to recommend, and every book on this list meets two criteria. First, it is easy enough that anybody can read and enjoy it, and second, every book on this list is actually going to be useful in your real life. They will all change the way that you think, some of them will even change the way that you act. Let's get started. The first two books that we're going to talk about are books that are mainly made for people who don't even really know what philosophy is, what it's about, and why it's important. Both of these books are very easy to consume, and the first one is Thomas Nagel's What Does It All Mean? A very short introduction to philosophy. This book is short, it's easy to read, and it covers a bunch of the different interesting questions that philosophers have spent centuries talking about. Are other people real? How do we know anything at all? Where do good and bad come from? Do we have free will? And so much more. This is a book that is mainly meant to whet your appetite. It's also going to introduce a lot of names and concepts that are going to keep popping up as you continue to learn philosophy, so it's really good at helping you decide where to funnel your energy once you finish it. The second book is mainly aimed at helping people understand that philosophy is actually really fun. Mentally jerking off about hypothetical shit is fascinating, and so this book is called The Pig That Wants to Be Eaten. It is a collection of 100 thought experiments. For those that don't know what a thought experiment is, it's basically a hypothetical question. If you were in this situation, what would you do? Or imagine this, what then? Each question is accompanied by a little section of what some philosophers throughout history might have thought about that particular scenario, and maybe even the origins of the question itself. And this makes a really good bathroom book, something you can keep next to your toilet, pick up, read for 3 to 5 minutes, and still make some useful headway. Now we can move from the general books that pique your interest into the specific books that spend their pages concentrating on a specific concept or idea. Each one of these books examines a different essential aspect of your life, and I promise you that when you read each one, you are going to walk away thinking about aspects of your life fundamentally differently. The first one is the book All About Love by Bell Hooks, which, if you couldn't tell, is a book all about love. Now, this book asks a lot of interesting philosophical questions related to love. What is the difference between love as an act that you perform for somebody and cathexis, which is simply investing your emotional energy in them? Can you love somebody and hurt them? And if so, what does that mean about love? How is the love between a parent and a child different between that parent and their spouse, or that parent and their friends, or that child and the people at their school? All of those questions and more are talked about in this book. It is an essential read for anybody who is in community with other people, which is to say, anybody, and it will change the way that you think about the role of love in your life. Next up is a book that is not recommended nearly enough. I have never seen somebody recommend this on TikTok, which is a shame because it's amazing. It is Sissela Bach's book, Lying, Moral Choice in Public and Private Life. This is a book, again, as the title would suggest, about lying. It's specifically about the contexts under which lying is or isn't permissible, why that would be the case, and how we should think about lying as a tool for both manipulation and good. It's a simple fact, all of us lie. Whether that's telling a stranger that you've had a good day when you've actually had a bad one, or concealing something that's genuinely a secret from a close friend of yours, all of these are examples of lying, and this book is a really good treatment on how the philosophy of all that sorts itself out. So I highly recommend Lying by Sissela Bach. Next up is the always delightful Happy City by Charles Montgomery. I have recommended this a lot on live stream, and this is a book about how we can design cities to make people happier. Now you might be thinking, Cole, I don't design cities, so how am I going to take anything useful away from this book? Easy. The fundamental conceit of the book is that if we want to build cities that make people happy, we have to first understand what sorts of things actually make people happy, and this book does a really good job of examining those. When I read this book, I started thinking more about how my own life was lacking in some of these really important factors in happiness, like exposure to nature and connectedness with other people who I am not already directly in contact with, so I started making changes in my life to facilitate me getting those things, and guess what? I got happier. The next book is a little bit controversial, and I apologize I have to be a little bit vague with it here on TikTok, but it's the book Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism by Dr. Kristen Godsey, who, by the way, is a fantastic author and everything she's ever written is worth reading, but this book is a really good exploration into feminist philosophy and feminist economics, which is the thing that you might not ever have thought of, but this book talks a lot about the relationship between economic independence and economic mobility and the social relationships that people have with one another, obviously including the sexual context. The book starts off by looking into a study that was done between Eastern and Western Germany, two countries with very similar histories and populations who, after World War II, were governed under two wildly different economies. Eastern Germany under centrally planned socialism and Western Germany under laissez-faire capitalism. And this study looked at the social habits of women in both countries, and they found that women in Eastern Germany had social habits that were more pleasurable, more frequent, and overall more volitionary, something that they wanted to do. And so this book asks the question, why is that? Why did economic circumstances change these social relationships? And what is the kind of relationship between social habits of humans and the economic systems that they live in? It is fascinating, and I recommend that you read it. The last set of books are books that dive into an even more specific area in philosophy, but again, all of these are books that are easy enough that anyone can read them, even without formal philosophy experience, and they're all books that are going to genuinely change the way that you think. The first one is Sarah Bakewell's Et the Existentialist Cafe. Existentialism is a movement within philosophy that began largely in France, beginning in World War II and extending after that. Existentialism is fundamentally about this idea called the absurd. In a nutshell, it's the idea that human beings are clearly hardwired to search for meaning in life, and so long as you don't believe in a god, it doesn't seem that life has some sort of objective meaning for us to find. That contradiction between our desire to find meaning and the lack of that meaning being there is what we call the absurd, and the answers to the question of what do we do then, that is existentialism. This book is going to cover all of the major existentialist theories from the works of Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, Albert Camus, and many more, while also expanding into some other interesting areas of philosophy like phenomenology, another very beautiful word that just rolls off the tongue. It is very easy to read, delightfully interesting, covers a good bit of history, and again is the sort of thing that you can read at any pace and still make meaningful headway. Continuing the theme of existentialism, I would be remiss if I didn't also include The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. Cliché of a recommendation as this is, it really is worth reading. Camus is also answering that fundamental question, what do we do about the meaning of life? And his answer to that question is that we should reject the desire to find that meaning entirely. We don't just find our own meaning, we reject the desire to find meaning entirely. Also, please don't kill yourself. That's what this book is about. So worth a read, especially if you're not in a great place right now. But very good series of essays. This next book is the only book that is actually on this list written by an old dead Greek dude, but it's also the only book in the pantheon of Greek literature that I think is useful for a beginner to actually read, and that is Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Now, this is a book that is relatively short. Of Greek philosophy, it is still quite easy to read, and you can chunk it up. There's lots of secondary sources online about this, but certainly a little more ambitious than some of the other texts. The thing that I really like about this book is that it's based around this idea of habituation, which is the idea that if you want to be a good person, essentially all you need to do is make a habit out of doing good acts. And by performing good acts habitually, you will become a good person. Many books within the work of ethics just talk about what things are good and bad, but they don't talk about how you actually go about doing those things, and this book does. It's also where the idea of finding the golden mean between vice and virtue, not too much of something, but not too little of it, kind of originates within the canon of Western philosophy. So again, I think it's worth a read, and of all the old Greek stuff, this is the one that you'll be able to enjoy the most. And quick note here, this is like a mini recommendation, but another work within ethics that I think is worth reading because it's so incredibly short is John Stuart Mill's text on utilitarianism. You can finish this in a day in a coffee shop if you are dedicated. This book is very easy to read. It's really more of a pamphlet than anything, and it's one of the foundational texts of an entire field of ethics called consequentialism, which is basically a philosophy that says that what makes acts good and bad is not the virtue with which you do them, nor the act itself, but rather the consequences that come after that. And utilitarianism is a specific kind of consequentialism that is based around the idea that we ought to maximize utility or pleasure and minimize pain. And last but not least, if you want a broad overview of a bunch of different ethical philosophies, then I cannot more highly recommend enough The Fundamentals of Ethics by Russ Shafer Landau. As you can see, my copy is very heavily well used, not only by myself, but also because I loan it out to people. And this book is fantastic. It covers a bunch of different meta-ethical and normatively ethical theories, and it goes through each of them. It gives you a basic outline of it, and then it gives you a little section of arguments for and a little section of arguments against, and it leaves the deciding up to you. If you want to expose yourself shotgun style to a bunch of different ethical philosophies to find the one that you most align with, this is the right way to do that. That is all the books that I have for you. Thank you for making it through this video. I wish you the best in the new year. I hope you keep reading philosophy. And as Stephen West always says, thanks for wanting to know more today than you did yesterday.